So welcome back, guys. So earlier on, I defined a monogamous marriage as is seen in Nigeria. So I'll proceed further to describe what a customary law marriage looks like over here in Nigeria. So basically, customary law marriage is a marriage between one man and multiple women. Okay, that is the Nigerian definition of a customary law marriage. Now, what distinguishes a customary law marriage from a monogamous or a marriage under the Act is the fact that there is the element of multiplicity. And when I say multiplicity, I emphasize multiplicity of women. Okay, so whilst polyandry is a form of marriage that is practiced in certain areas around the world, over here in Nigeria, polyandry is almost not practiced in any part of the country. So we have polygamy, where one man marries one wife. So we take, for example, Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, where Okonkwo, the protagonist of the novel, married several women. Okay, so this originated from ancient times where marriage was solely for the purpose of childbearing. So a woman had the obligation to give birth to as many children as she could in order to aid the family to survive. So the number of children will determine how wealthy or indeed how poor or wretched a man or his family could be. So the more children, the more wives, and the more children, the higher the chances of being a wealthy person. So basically, that's what customary law is about. And it's always been stated that customary law is a mirror of acceptable usage. Okay, so by this definition, we see that it is what accrues to a particular society. It's what accrues to members of a particular society. It is important to note that there are three tests for determining whether a customary law is valid or not in Nigeria. And over the years, the courts have used this test to determine whether or not a customary law should be practiced. We have the test of it must not be contrary to public policy, incompatible either directly or by necessary implication with any law for the time being in force, and then finally, it must not be repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience. So these are the three major tests that are used to define customary law in Nigeria, and the same applies to the marriages. Okay, so marriages that are practiced and that do not abide with these three tests are said to be invalid. Now, what determines the validity? First off, the Marriage Act and the Matrimonial Causes Act, in the process of delineating the confines and the limitations of marriage under the Act, have also come in contact with customary law marriages and have enacted certain provisions for it. So where a person marries one wife under the Act, he cannot subsequently marry another wife under customary law unless the first marriage under the Act has been alternatively dissolved, has been brought to an end. Okay, so that is what applies. Now, while these acts are primary driving forces of both the marriage under the Act and customary law marriages, customary law still uses or is still regulated by the various customs that are accrued to various societies. So, for instance, Section 17, Sub 1 of the Evidence Act brought in the issue of judicial notice. So customary law is only customary law when it has been duly noticed by the court. So where a customary law has not been duly noticed by the court, then it can be said not to be in existence. So, but in practice, we see that there are certain practices that are done hideously in villages and nooks and crannies that may not be compatible with what the court or indeed what the law of Nigeria may prescribe. So it is to that extent that customary law and indeed customary law marriages is defined. So in summary, customary law marriage is basically marriage between one man and multiple women, and in rare cases, multiple men and one woman. And then, as against monogamous marriage or marriage under the act, which is solely between a man and a woman.